zero of the Venezuelan migrant gang takeover.
It was in Aurora, Colorado.
As you can see, this is not just a regular door. This is a recently replaced door, because right here, some people came up right on this ground with some guns, extorted the inhabitants, put their shiesties and Nike Tech shits on, and went back outside.
We were helping her move out, and she had cameras in her apartment, which showed guys with guns, and crowbars using to get into apartments and probably extort people for money.
The mayor of Aurora says Venezuelan gangs are overrunning apartment buildings there as part of an organized criminal effort.
Now they're gone. There's a bunch of cops here.
I tried to get to your live show, but couldn't swing it.
There's some media members like myself.
Wait, they're
here.
gone?
We are live on YouTube.
Like the Venezuelan gangs are gone, or the Venezuelan people? The Venezuelan people, they're repeating here. My bad.
Right now on Amazing Audits.
Ustedes saben que yo estoy en tu lado, que muchas de la comunidad están en tus lados. Y sabemos que no es verdad. La gente no son completamente estúpidos.
This, you're looking at it right here. All the poverty and any of the crime that happens, and the gangs that are coming out here, all of that is because of illegal immigration.
The U.S. government has a role in what Venezuela has done to its people.
Right.
So let's do something about that.
And so what do? Let them all come here?
No.
And the taxpayers pay for everything?
Under crooked Joe Biden, every state is now a border state. We are being conquered. We're being actually conquered if you think of it from within.
And they kill Americans. They all have blood on their hands.
¿Por qué piensas las noticias dijeron eso sobre ustedes?
La noticia difama muchas cosas. Ellos están difamando muchas cosas, como ellos dicen que todos estos apartamentos son todos pandilleros. Es mentira. Sí. Aquí lo que hay gente trabajadora.
O vinimos todos aquí a trabajar, a echarle ganas, ya que en nuestro país no nos dan la libertad de hacer lo que uno quiere por la situación país.
En Venezuela trabajé en el Hospital JM de Los Ríos, Hospital de Niños en Caracas. Duré trabajando 6 años, pero ya de verdad que ya no pude vivir con lo que ganaba.
Yo estoy trabajando. Sí, yo trabajo en el tallo pegando cerámica.
Sí.
Aquí hay personas trabajadoras, luchadoras que tienen sus hijos, salen a las 6 de la mañana, 5 de la mañana, si no se van a las Home Depot, se van aquí a una zona aquí donde buscan trabajo, entonces...
Aquí no hay pandilleros, no hay nada.
What I found at the apartment complex were no gang members, but a full-blown media circus, something that the building's residents, most of whom immigrated illegally from Venezuela after the rise of authoritarian leader Nicolas Maduro, couldn't have imagined. After all, robberies and brazen criminal incidents are actually pretty common in Aurora.
I mean, look, Aurora's always had gang issues. You can go back to the 70s. The Colfax corridor's always had some gang issues. We've always had turnover of different cultures that have kind of lived in that area, and every culture kind of brings its own gang issues with them.
And there's a lot of different hoods in Colorado, but Aurora is one of the more well-known ones, if not the most well-known one.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's never really been sweet out in Aurora, you know what I mean?
But this particular incident caught the eye of the national media for 2 reasons. For one, the recently arrested main perpetrator, nicknamed Cookie,
I don't know if you saw the man, he goes by the nickname of Cookie,
is a member of the multinational Venezuelan gang called Tren de Aragua.
So it's Tren de Aragua, and they started as a prison gang.
What the fuck?
Tren de Aragua.
So it's Tren
Yo, look at that fucking...
de Aragua, and they started as a prison gang in Venezuela, quickly grew within the prison system there, and became more of a transnational criminal organization.
But secondly, and most importantly, Cookie, along with his companions, are migrants who, like 11 million others living in the United States right now, hop the US-Mexico border illegally.
and I had a huge issue with that. And so I started asking APD leadership, what are we doing? He was in custody, he was released, he
Yo, like, why? Oh man, why are these people being allowed? Even like allowed? It's illegally, right? And I get that, but is it not almost like being allowed also? Are they not helping these people who cross the border illegally stay in America?
committed more crimes. He was in custody again.
There's been state laws that have been passed, one in 2019, stating that the counties could...
Or by, well, I guess I was asking a question. Well, by they, I mean, I don't know. I don't know who they are. I don't know who's allowing these people to stay here who did cross illegally and have no form of identification whatsoever. Yeah, I don't know. Does that fit into... I guess I should look this up. Does illegally immigrating to America also illegally immigrating to America the what's it called when they come over here, they seek asylum, right? So asylum, does that immigrating to America go under the asylum law? If you are seeking asylum in the U.S., do you have to cross the border legally? Families escaping violence and persecution in their home countries often undertake a dangerous journey to seek safety in the United States. Many are fleeing unprecedented growing humanitarian crisis in Latin America, the Caribbean, Afghanistan, and parts of Africa. Asylum is a form of protection granted to individuals who can demonstrate that they are unable or unwilling to return to their country because of persecution or a well-founded fear of persecution on account of race, religion, nationality, membership in a particular social group, or political opinion. The right to seek asylum was incorporated in national law and international law following the atrocities of World War II. Congress adopted key provisions of the Refugee Convention, including the international definition of refugee, to U.S. immigration law when it passed the Refugee Act of 1980. An asylum seeker is someone who has fled their home in search of safety and protection in another country. Because they cannot obtain protection in their own country, they seek it elsewhere. Asylum seekers may be of any age, gender, socio-economic status, or nationality, though the majority come from regions of the world that are suffering from conflict, disaster, and weak rule of law. Asylee in the term... Okay, just can you give me the answer? Established rights under U.S. and international law, the U.S. government has severely restricted access to asylum at the border since 2017. Policy called the Migrant Protection Protocols, or Migrant Protection Protocols, for certain asylum seekers to wait out their U.S. immigration court cases in Mexico with little or no access to legal counsel. Although a federal court blocked the Biden administration's attempts to end this program, the Supreme Court later ruled in the administration's favor. For over 3 years, MPP impacted more than 75,000 asylum seekers, requiring them to wait out their U.S. court hearings in Mexico, mostly in northern border towns. There they faced the often possible expectations to gather evidence and prepare for a trial conducted in English while struggling to keep their families safe. U.S. border policies continue to represent a challenge for asylum seekers to get to safety. While Mexico has also undertaken new actions to slow migration at both the northern and southern border, explains Rafael Velasquez, country director for the IRC in Mexico. Mexico has certainly become one of the main recipients of asylum seekers in the recent years, but the country is not necessarily an option for everyone. Was Title 42? Well, that's not what I'm asking. Yes, seeking asylum is legal. Asylum seekers must be in the U.S. or at a port of entry to request the opportunity to apply for asylum. Wait a minute, but by that article right there, I felt like it was kind of saying also that you don't want people to wait in the country that they're trying to get out of to get into another country, so just bring them in anyway. And once they're in there, what? Then you go through the paperwork of trying to get them documented? And that's better, somehow. I would be open to someone telling me why that's better. Why that's the better option than just having them wait in their country, to where you can get all the paperwork and be able to identify these people and things like that. Like, I think you need a little bit of time. You don't want to put too much stress on a country with the immigration, right? Like, if 25 million people immigrated in the past 5 years to your country, or I don't know what the actual number is. Let me look it up. Wait a minute, if they're saying that they're illegally entering the US, but then filing under asylum, then it is legal. It's not illegal. If that's the point, that's someone make a good point.
Not house illegal aliens
stands.
for ICE, like they couldn't hold the illegal aliens, so they had to let them out on the street.
Now a judge has said that he is to be deported back to Venezuela, but we're stuck in this limbo where Venezuela has come out and said, we're not taking anybody back.
These removal flights are supposed to send illegal immigrants with a final order of removal back to Venezuela. They have, again, been rejected from the Venezuelan government for the last 4 weeks now. So what is the reason here? Well, the U.S. reimposed sanctions on state-owned mining companies.
By wanting to harm us, you harm yourselves. No one will stop us, Mr. Yankee.
And it's known that they opened their prisons. They let everybody out of their prisons to come here.
We feel that it's important to sidebar here and note that Maduro did not open Venezuelan prisons or deliberately send criminals north to America as a way to punish us for the sanctions, which is how it's being reported by the mainstream conservative press.
Venezuela is emptying its prisons and sending their most dangerous criminals to the southern border.
They're coming from prisons and jails, mental institutions, and insane asylums like Silence of the Lamb. Silence of the Lamb.
I've heard that so many times. I've heard them say this so many times. Now, why? This is my question. Why? If they're not being released from prisons, and if they're not only being released from prisons to just immigrate to the United States, why don't you say why they're actually being released from prisons? You know what? Why don't you actually go out and say why these people are leaving their countries in the first place?
The late, great Hannibal Lecter, he'd like to have you over for dinner.
This is actually just not true. So I'm going to do my best to give you guys a breakdown of what's going on down there. Venezuela has lost a quarter of its population, roughly 7.7 million people in the past 10 years, as a result of a few factors, mainly hyperinflation, corruption, and the collapse of the petroleum industry, an industry that once accounted for 75% of Venezuela's exports and was dramatically stifled by US-imposed sanctions.
Today's executive order demonstrates the US government's condemnation of tyranny and dictatorship in Venezuela.
These sanctions, which were also imposed by Mexico and all of Western Europe.
But that's the only way they're going to make money, if they have a dictator. It's easier to make money with a dictator.
And prohibited the purchase of Venezuelan petroleum, were meant to bankrupt the socialist Maduro regime in favor of a US-backed opposition candidate named Juan Guaido.
And the Biden administration is considering an easing of sanctions in exchange for free presidential elections in 2024.
What followed the sanctions was nearly a decade of hunger, poverty, and decay that continues to this day. Over a quarter of Venezuela's population is actively experiencing a food insecurity crisis.
74% of respondents lost an average of 19 pounds.
And to make matters worse, Maduro embezzled and dramatically mismanaged whatever funds and resources remained, while simultaneously cracking down on journalists, protesters, and even issuing out arrest warrants for his political opponents.
¡Criminal! ¡Asesino! ¡Terrorista!
Para la gente que no sabe qué lo pasó con Maduro.
Para la gente que no sabe qué es lo que pasó con Maduro, hay una dictadura. Sí. En Venezuela hay una dictadura, está claro con lo que pasó ahorita con las elecciones. No hay un Estado de Derecho y la mayoría de nosotros nos ha tocado salir, no podemos protestar, no podemos decir algo que vaya contra de la verdad porque enseguida presos políticos nos asesinan, nos persiguen y eso no es mentira, esa es la realidad del país. Antes de Maduro vivíamos bien, éramos ricos y no lo sabíamos. Venezuela siempre fue un país próspero pero la mala administración con el gobierno de Chávez, luego fueron expropiando empresas, se fueron apoderando de empresas, la gente ya no quiso invertir, automáticamente hubo un caos. Y a raíz de eso...
Google Cloud AI knows he has a 10
This seems like a perfect job for the CIA. Get it done, boys.
Es lo que se está viviendo ahorita en Venezuela.
Maduro aside, with poverty comes crime. And it was these dire economic circumstances in Venezuela that transformed it from a relatively safe country to having the highest murder rate on Earth by 2018.
With a national minimum wage under $10 a month, these men say poverty has led them to a life of crime.
Gangs like Tren de Aragua tripled in size, and prisons became so overcrowded that the government could no longer manage them.
Human rights groups say Venezuelan jails are 50% overcrowded on average.
In a last-ditch effort to restore order behind bars, Maduro enacted a policy called hybrid governance, where he actually handed over control of the prisons to the gangs.
This is a prison out of control. It is the prisoners who are in charge.
Overall, it was a terrible idea. In the case of Tocaron prison, which was controlled by, of course, Tren de Aragua leader Nino Guerrero, the gang built a baseball field, playground, swimming pool, nightclub, and zoo.
Yeah, it's quite a lot. Like, they built swimming pools in the prisons. They have like caterers come in and they're paying off the cops.
But still, inmates weren't technically allowed to leave, if that makes sense. So while gangs were given free rein to radically transform the prisons themselves, the state wasn't opening them, which is a huge difference. Anyways, back to Danielle.
And as you can see that even still today, our current interim police chief is still denying any knowledge of any gang presence.
We want to reassure the people that live in this community, gang members have not taken over this complex.
But her own police officers are telling the truth. I talk with several of them. There was a notice that went out that they were not allowed to respond to these complexes unless there was at least 4 of them. Well, we're down upwards of 200 officers right now in the police department. So getting that kind of staffing, that in and of itself is tough. But then also too, I mean, it became very clear that officers were very leery of going into this complex. I mean, at the end of the day, they want to go home too.
There were 2 shootings right over in that area last night, and they've already greenlit police officers in the area. Tren de Aragua has given the green light for their gang members to be able to shoot at law enforcement officers.
Wow, that's unbelievable. It's important to mention that statistically, undocumented migrants are 33% less likely to commit violent crimes than naturalized American citizens. But even if their crime rate did correspond with the American incarceration rate, which is roughly 0.0.
But you know what those numbers are though, and you know they're skewed. You know they're skewed because those people aren't identified anyway. There's no way to identify them.
0.05%, there would still be tens of thousands of migrant criminals. And it's this buzzword, migrant crime, that led this story to spread like wildfire.
This crime,
even though these people are saying it, even though they're saying this is the amount of people that are undocumented, they're committing crime, that's not even it. You're not even right. There's more, or there's less, or whatever. Well, there'd only be more, right? There's way more. And I'm not fear-mongering.
Rate, which is roughly 0.05%, there would still be tens of thousands of migrant criminals. And it's this buzzword, migrant crime, that led this story to spread like wildfire.
there's crime, there's violent crime, there's migrant crime. We have a new category of crime. It's called migrant crime. And it's going to be worse than any other form of crime. They want to fight police officers. Our criminals don't even do that so much, okay?
If you've watched our coverage of the Democratic National Convention,
They know we don't have any other fucking options. It's just fucking Harris or a goddamn crazy fascist.
the Green Party rally,
My name is Jill Stein. I am the Green Party candidate for president.
I got a 5-month prison sentence for showing Bill Clinton an aborted baby.
or a Trump rally in Arizona,
It's all about President Donald J. Trump and JD Vance.
you know that one thing's for sure. It's election time, baby. In around 60 days, a new president will be decided upon, either Kamala Harris or Donald Trump.
An incredibly tight race across 6 battleground states.
Essential to Trump's platform is the issue of migrant crime.
They're raping and they're killing people at levels that we've never seen.
Every time it happens, RNC state media reports it,
Pablo is charged with 3 felonies.
hypnotizing their viewer base with buzzwords and micro-traumatic imagery.
Strangled to death by migrant criminals from Venezuela. Death.
Stabbing a teenage girl.
An invasion.
Over 1,000 Chinese aliens.
If a picture's worth 1,000 words.
Farming engagement through outrage,
This threat is growing by the day.
with the ultimate goal of channeling anger into conservative votes. And it's honestly working quite well.
The people that came across the border that came in and killed our children, somebody needs to pay for it.
That's why I'm voting for Trump.
But media matrix aside, the border situation is an absolute nightmare. We began covering it around 8 months ago and definitely made some mistakes along the way, like assuming that as American citizens, we were allowed to cross the Rio Grande and wouldn't be violating any federal laws in doing so.
Manos arriba.
Evidently, we were incorrect, but we learned some things along the way. Most importantly, that the drug cartels, who also are tasked with importing fentanyl into the United States, are controlling all human smuggling routes along the border and making a surreal NASDAQ amount of money doing it.
When you look at the amount of people that have come in, about 7 million people that have come in, the average price for people to come across the border is about $5,000. But it can get up to as $15,000, $20,000. If you look at some Chinese, they're paying $25,000, $30,000 because they get the grade A experience and the bus ride up through the border.
If you were to do the math there, how much does the cartel make per year?
Hundreds of billions. Like I would have to look at recent statistics, but I would put it $300 or $400 billion probably.
We also learned that from an administrative level, that there's no infrastructure in place to accommodate this mass influx of asylum requests being made by the migrants, most of whom claim they're fleeing narco violence or political persecution in their home countries.
¿Dónde eres?
De México.
¿Cómo fue tu vida en México?
Muy peligroso. Es que gobierna el cártel de Jalisco.
Hay mucho movimiento de eso de las drogas y todo.
The average wait time for an asylum hearing is currently 4.5 years.
It's gotten so bad, like it matters what the city is. If you're in Miami, you're waiting almost 8 years. If you go to a smaller immigration court, you might be only waiting 4 years. And to that point, a lot of these people will not have a good asylum claim. A lot of them came here for economic reasons. That's not an asylum claim.
¿Qué significa asilo?
Pues que ayudan a las personas con los niños que vienen de México para acá.
¿Es un proceso fácil?
Pues yo digo que sí.
¿Y vas a sola hablar con la migra y decir yo tengo problemas en mi país?
Sí, así es.
There lies a big part of the problem. From an official standpoint, poverty and hunger are not valid asylum claims under U.S. law. To officially reach refugee status and receive asylum protections, you have to prove that you're actively fleeing violence or persecution being leveraged by your home country's government.
So it has to be religious persecution, like sexual persecution, war, if there's different things that are going on in that country.
Which in the case of Mexico and most of Central America would be very hard to prove. Yet, any migrant claiming asylum has the right to be heard by a judge, leaving millions of people with potentially invalid asylum claims stuck in limbo somewhere in the U.S.
So now you get 5-6 years down the road, they have their immigration hearing and they're told they have to go home. Yeah. And they've started to establish a life in the United States. Like that's not good for them either. That's bad. Like we should deal with the asylum claims as fast as we can. If you have asylum, come on in. Yeah. If you don't have asylum.
So they do let people cross illegally and then claim asylum and then still live in America while being here illegally. And they let them work, do they pay taxes? How can you pay taxes if you can't be identified? New method, but also, what the fuck? Why would you do that? That's a terrible idea.
I'm sorry, you need to go home.
Speeding up the asylum application process would be a great advantage to Venezuelans, most of whom do have valid asylum claims because of the actions of the Maduro.
Right. And so the people that don't have valid ones are kind of just gunking it up. They're kind of like gunking up the process of getting everyone else claims in, right?
Government.
Venezuela has an asylum claim because of the political situation that is occurring. So they have a dictator there who is keeping people from exerting their other politics. That is an asylum claim.
Feels like you should figure out if these guys are where they're from and what's going on in that country, and then that's who you accept based off of that. You have to figure out what country they come from, and then what's going on in that country, and then you do the math on if you do the asylum or not. And that makes it way easier. Without changing the process a whole, it makes it way easier.
But coming to a country to say, well, I just want to make money, and we've seen it at the border. You've been to the border and interviewed people, and the first thing they say is, I'm coming to America because I want to make money.
¿Qué quieres hacer aquí en los Estados Unidos?
Quiero superar, sacar adelante mi familia.
¿Quieres trabajar?
Sí, quiero trabajar.
That's not an asylum claim.
While I personally believe there should be an easy path to citizenship for anybody who wants to come into the country and make an honest living, the point I'm trying to make is that the border situation, unlike the migrant crime situation, isn't a non-issue or just a news item being brought up to stoke division ahead of the election. The mismanagement of the border, which has been horrific, hurts both Americans and migrants. It hurts Americans because it benefits the cartels that import fentanyl, a drug which I'm sure as many of you know killed 112,000 people last year. And it hurts migrants with actual legitimate asylum claims who now find themselves lost in a system that was supposed to be set up to benefit them. Yet still, when it comes to the cartels and apparent drug gangs like Tren de Aragua, I can't help but feel that it's our insatiable appetite for drugs as Americans that's fueling most of this at the core. Do you think that part of the problem in general is just American drug use at the core? Like, do you think that they're responding to a demand, or do you think they're creating the demand?
Great question. And look, it's both, man. Like, America has a huge drug problem. And America's drug problem drives the cartels to try to make more money and opens up avenues for these criminal elements to come in and try to make their money.
Yeah,
So definitely, look, you know, America's need or want for drugs is driving a lot of this. But we've definitely seen like these groups set up and then an uptick in overdose deaths because of fentanyl.
But let's go back to the apartment complex story. When the story about the robbery first emerged, the buzzwords that caught wind were migrant gang takeover, framing it as if Tren de Aragua had taken complete control of the apartment complex and by extension, all of Aurora.
That might be fear-mongering, or whatever the fuck Kamala Harris want to say, that's fear-mongering. No, it's fucking not. This is reality.
You went there and you saw AR-15s being held by gang members.
One.
Okay.
One. These motherfuckers is really out here with fucking AKs. It definitely was a takeover.
However, even the most vocal anti-gang figureheads in the community disagree with this notion entirely.
The migrant gangs have not taken over Aurora.
Where I have specifically said apartment complexes in Aurora have been taken over. This cannot be downplayed, the severity of this Tren de Aragua gang.
It's something that if we don't pay attention to it because they're getting guns, they're setting up shop, if we allow it to fester, it is gonna get much worse.
He's right. Yeah.
Shortly after the initial headlines broke, a second story emerged. A rumor that the Hells Angels were going to show up to take Aurora back from the Venezuelans.
The Hells Angels are now going to go solve this issue.
Hells Angels are mad. They're mad. The Mongols are mad, and they're just mad at the fucking up, like, just the communities in general.
It's gonna be dangerous, and the government is not gonna like it.
And what came last?
Hells Angels. Fuck. The Hells Angels are mad right now.
It's a triple gaslight KO move led by local socialist nonprofits who claim there was no robbery or gang at all.
Right now, they're using this gang reason to condemn these buildings, but to do it, you know, with a faster judicial process that is because of a racist rumor that is going to result in these people being on the streets.
In this episode, we're going to do our best to get down to the bottom of what really happened. First, we're going to speak to the initial whistleblowers, former chief of ICE and congressional candidate John Fabricator.
They're coming in here and they broke through that door.
And Aurora City Councilwoman Danielle Jurinsky.
The Romeros are real. These are real people.
I never thought that the shirt I wore to school one spring morning would lead to a federal lawsuit.
What?
But the reaction from the adults running my school didn't leave me with much choice. My school spends all of June expressing its view on LGBTQ+ issues.
That witnessed all of this.
Then we're going to talk to concerned residents of the complex.
Stay one track right now. We're going to stay on this track.
Nadie me cobra. Yo tengo mi contrato.
Some bikers who showed up to the property.
What's your initial take? What do you think?
Activists who showed up to defend residents.
I'm expecting people to be assaulted. I think it's very dangerous that this kind of rhetoric is allowed in our political landscape.
Jaded local rappers, generally perplexed by the situation.
Days in my apartment picking meth off the carpet. I say it's retarded, but I was slow to get anything started. Days awake, I start hallucinating.
Live streamers who showed up to make content.
This is my first day on the scene.
And in a hellish union, all these people at the same time.
So we are admitting that there are gangs. We're admitting there's gangs.
I don't know what they do. I haven't seen them personally. I have not seen them.
With the goal of getting an answer to one question, does Tren de Aragua really run these streets? Or is the property ran by an allegedly delinquent slumlord named Zev Baumgarten from a company called CBZ Management, who 4 months before the incident deleted his email address and phone number and fled to Florida after evicting 75 families at his now condemned property next door, leaving the red brick apartments in such a state of disrepair and decay that the city of Aurora is now criminally prosecuting Zev for code violations.
CBZ Management, that's the group that Aurora Mayor Mike Kaufman referred to as slumlords in an interview with 9.
Yeah, that could be it. I think that could be it.
and news 2 weeks ago.
But let's keep seeing.
Conveniently
'cause who
prompting
knows?
him to hire a PR firm in Fort Lauderdale, Florida called Red Banyan Crisis Communications to plant stories in the media about a gang takeover ahead of his trial.
So the property owner did hire a PR firm. That's when it really started gaining media attention.
All right, let's get into it.
Yeah, so I'm John Fabricatore. I served 30 years in the United States government. I'm a United States Air Force veteran. The last 26 years were with Immigration Customs Enforcement.
Have you ever like broken up a stash house where they have humans being smuggled?
Wait, fuck this. Wait, fuck this. What? Wait a minute. He funded? He was funding the media before his trial took place? Like his company had funds that were going into certain media corporations that reported on the apartments that he owned that were being allegedly taken over by gangs that was said on the news. Well, that's really interesting. Well, but let's see what this guy has to say.
We've done a lot with that. So I was with enforcement removal operations. So I worked a lot of smuggling loads, people that were being smuggled into the United States, especially here in Colorado. We've got I-25 and I-70. So it's always been a big smuggling corridor for humans and drugs and everything else. You see the cartels pack, 20 people inside a Suburban, they're not letting them out. They're making them pee in, containers, and they're keeping all that in the car, and the car's overloaded and they're not feeding them. It's a bad situation. These stash houses, it's the same thing. The bathrooms don't work a lot of times. You got 20, 30 people in a stash house, and these people are trying to get in the U.S., but the smugglers are taking advantage of them just as much.
Is there such a thing as good and evil, or is there only like placing self-interest above the wants and needs of others?
That's a real philosophical question. Yeah, no, I totally get it. Like when we look at what we think good and evil is it structured on the fundamentals of like religion? Like when we look at, if you're a religious person, then you have this foundation of what you believe good and evil is. Like you read the Bible, you believe in the 10 Commandments or whatever, so you have this foundation of what is good. If you don't have that in your life and you've never grown up with that and you don't have this foundation, do you understand what is really right or wrong? Like if you're told it's okay to rob from people because they're richer than you, like that's been built into your foundation since you were a youth. So I think people can be programmed kind of to live a life of crime, but is there true good and evil? I've seen a lot of what I believe is evil in my life. I interviewed this one guy, he was from Laos at a prison. He was supposed to get out for parole. I'd asked him about this woman that he had killed in her house. He was doing her lawn. He broke in, went upstairs, killed her in the room, rolled her in a carpet, and tried to set the house on fire to cover up the crime. So I asked him if he had remorse about the crime, and he laughed to me. He started laughing about it. And at that laugh, I still, to this day, this was probably 15 years ago, to this day, I still can hear that laugh in the back of my head. It was just so, to me, it felt demonic, like when he was laughing about it. And it's still, like even now, and I'm getting chills, like I can still hear that cackle that he had. And it was...
What's going on right now?
So the situation right now really has to, when you look at it and you look at the history of it, really has to do with the sanctuary status of the state. This is a sanctuary state. There's been a lot of newcomers that have come here, a lot of migrants that have come up from the border, and we've got this small element of criminal, illegal aliens that have come up from Venezuela that are starting to cause some problems in some of the apartment complexes.
Yes, but let's not leave this fact out. They are seeking asylum, correct? They're all seeking asylum. Let's not leave that out. Because they're not illegal alien. They're not illegal immigrants. These people aren't immigrating illegally. They are immigrating legally into a country and asking for asylum while waiting for their asylum thing to process to where they get put through the courts. They live in America. These people are living in America without forms of identification. That's a problem. That's what you need to focus on. You're focusing on the wrong thing. You're saying that these people are illegal. They're not. They come here and then they're asking for asylum, a thing that we do, and we allow them to stay in our country while we're awaiting to see if they file for asylum or not, right? But while they're staying here, most of them, and I don't even know now what I'm talking about, but while they're staying here, most of them don't have identification. That's the biggest problem. Not that they're illegal. And now that I know that the asylum thing, they're allowed to be in the United States while waiting, they're not illegal. That's an actual thing in the law or whatever, right?
Proceeding, I'd like to define what a sanctuary city actually means. As it currently stands, there are 633 counties in the US enforcing sanctuary policies, which prohibit local law enforcement, like Aurora PD, from communicating or working with any federal law enforcement agencies, like the US Border Patrol or Immigration and Customs Enforcement. Texas, the state with the highest number of illegal border crossings, has no sanctuary cities or counties at all, which 7 months ago led Texas Governor Greg Abbott to charter thousands of packed buses full of migrants from the Texas border into sanctuary cities like Chicago, New York City, and Denver in order to make a statement to progressive lawmakers who he felt weren't taking the border issue seriously.
Tonight, Governor Greg Abbott's office revealed the state just bussed its first group of migrants from the border to Denver, Colorado. His office added since April of...
Well, that's what they're there for. That's what you should be doing. If they're going to stay in Texas awaiting for these people who are able to take them, because they uphold whatever law allows them to stay in that state or in this country even, then they should be sending buses down there to pick up these people and bring them. Them not working with Border Patrol, them not working with things like that, that's a little odd though. That's a little odd. Because if these people, if they don't claim, if they don't file for asylum, if they aren't able to stay in America, who's going to take them home? How are you going to get these people home? What are you going to ask your police officers on shift to go drive them home? No way. Probably not going to work. They should be working with Border Patrol and stuff like that, and ICE and whatever, right? Whatever government agency helps people who are in America illegally, or help people who are in America illegally get back to their home. And there's probably more that they do, but I don't know that much.
Texas has paid to transport more than 19,000 migrants to Washington, D.C., New York, Chicago, and Philadelphia.
It was shortly after this that Aurora city government began taking notice of the gang threat. So the gang itself, when did you first start seeing Tren de Aragua activity in the Aurora area?
So I first found out about Tren de Aragua after there was this mass gathering of roughly 5,000 people that happened July 29th. And they had gathered in anticipation of the Venezuelan election outcome.
The crowd expected an autocrat to be thrown out of power.
But about 5,000 of them gathered within an hour and took over an entire shopping center that left people, essentially trapped in their cars that were already.
Are you looking for more in this world?
The way this woman words things, it's obvious what kind of emotions she's trying to elicit as a response.
Are you ready to be
parked in spaces? People were.
It's not only that she's telling you the truth or telling you facts. She's phrasing it in a certain way to make you feel a certain way.
We're trapped in stores.
Nigga, the Venezuelans is taking over.
Oh, they just jacked that.
They just jacked them?
You hear them yelling that someone just got jacked. You hear them yelling that they were just almost hit by a car. A Target employee was assaulted. They ransacked that Target, shooting guns off into the air, multiple crimes.
Several months after the crazy election party, another incident took place, allegedly predating the extortion video that went viral.
So what the original police report states, they showed up at the apartment complex office. They beat one of the property managers very badly. The office. Police report states they
No gang involvement. And this could be, you know, I mean, that doesn't mean anything. Was a felony charge in Aurora at Helena Street. And it's the aggravated assault of a non-family member with a gun. That's the offense number 1. It states here. And offense number 2 that it states here on this piece of paper is assault. And then the offense number 3 is assault and battery.
They showed up at the apartment complex office. They beat one of the property managers very badly. They hospitalized him. And then they held a gun to the maintenance man's head and the cleaning lady's head, robbed her, and told them, you will never return to this property. Then the trash wasn't being taken out. You know, different things started happening. So I think slowly but surely, folks just started to not pay their rent. But a lot of folks also started leaving because they saw what was happening around them. They saw their surroundings. So a lot of folks just also started leaving.
Good.
What folks like the Romeros told me that they saw happening is that as soon as someone would leave.
You don't want it to get to that point, right, where people are leaving because they feel like they're not being protected or that things are different in their community, but also it's the right thing to do. And it's to show your county or city of where you live that you don't like the way things are going.
Someone who was acting as the broker amongst this group would go in, take photos of the apartment, and within a few hours, a migrant family would be moved in.
For context, the Romeros are the family who submitted the surveillance video of the robbery and moved out of the apartments shortly after.
And I think the last count, and that this is like 2 or 3 months ago, I think the Denver metro area, we've absorbed over 70,000 migrants. You know, so I'm sure there's some sort of communication amongst that community, and these apartments were being rented out.
As Danielle continued to explain it, I began to understand how theoretically an apartment building could be taken over if you were down to beat up landlords and had access to an under-the-table network of tens of thousands of people either living in shelters or on the streets. It's pretty simple. Step 1, pull up tripping on the building management, everybody who works there, and make them leave the property for good. Step 2, walk up and down the hallways, knock on every door, and threaten the leaseholding renters and make them leave while simultaneously trashing the property and neglecting basic services. So anybody who refuses will leave because it sucks so bad there. Step 3, once all the original residents and staff have fled, begin using back channels to move undocumented families into the units. Step 4, begin acting as landlord and collecting rent from them. If true and even possible, this sounds like an insanely creative Ocean's 11 style heist, engineered by an ingenious posse of multinational bandits.
And they think they can make this money because they've seen it in the media, they've seen it in Hollywood.
Why do you put Hannibal right there?
And what it does is these young men come here, they're not looking to work, they're not looking to jump on a construction crew or really bust their butt to make some money. They want to make it illicitly, and they're willing to do it through violence. And it's just stuff that has to be dealt with.
What's the solution?
For me, I look at it as we need to get back to a broken window strategy. And this was a strategy that was used in New York City in the late 90s, where they started arresting criminals for even lower level things that they were doing.
Broken windows policing is the belief that arresting people for minor quality of life offenses stops larger crimes from happening.
And that way you identify who they are, you start to see what they're doing, and you get them off the street faster. With that, ICE needs to be able to work with local law enforcement and be able to identify these gang members and deport them as soon as possible. Just get them out of the community. If they're not here to help America, they should be out of America.
After my sit-downs with John and Danielle, I'd heard enough about the alleged severity of the Tren de Aragua gang. After all, much like Donald Trump, they're both soon to be running for re-election. So I had to take what they said with a grain of salt. We decided to finally head on over and check out the property, conveniently located just a stone's throw from Colfax Street, a rundown yet diverse corridor connecting Aurora to downtown Denver. The complex was absolutely crawling with cops, who'd been deployed to escort Aurora Mayor Mike Kaufman for a walkthrough.
What the hell's going on? Says not everything that is said on the news It's true. Ma'am, what can you tell us about what's going on?
Bien.
It's not everything that is said on the news is true. Ma'am, what can you tell us about what's going on?
Bien, me encantan los Estados Unidos. Me ha ido bien, gracias a Dios.
As depicted earlier, every person that I talked to at the complex was employed, mostly working trade jobs and manual labor.
¿Qué haces para trabajo aquí?
Landscaping.
Yo soy un padre trabajador. Yo me paro todos los días. Me voy a las 5 de la mañana a trabajar. Llego a las 4 de la tarde. Ese es el oficio mío, todos los días trabajar. Yo no soy ningún delincuente ni nada. Aquí hay mucha gente trabajadora, mecánico,
Claro.
mucha gente que le echa pichón día a día, como dice dicho.
Sí.
Yo soy electricista.
Sí.
Yo tengo ya 1 año y medio trabajando en esa compañía como electricista.
Sí.
Y ahí estoy, gracias a Dios.
Still, some residents admit things have been quite hectic for the past couple months.
Hay personas que venimos a hacer lo bueno aquí, como hay personas que vienen a hacer lo malo. Tiempo atrás, semanas atrás, yo sentía temor de estar aquí adentro. Muchas veces disparos, muchas fiestas, muchas rumbas, muchas cosas malas, pero yo no sé quién hace esas cosas malas porque yo no salgo en.
Si somos 390 familias, que hayan 2, 3, 4 malos, no quiere decir que todos seamos malos. Yo creo que las autoridades competentes son las que se tienen que abocar a este problema, a descubrir la realidad, la verdad.
Before we arrived, police had apparently searched every single unit up and down for evidence of gang activity and found nothing.
Llegó la policía y revisó todo el apartamento para ver si tenían armamento y no encontraron nada.
No todos somos así, estamos trabajando y echándole ganas a la vida.
Nosotros somos personas buenas, también de buen corazón, y que queremos mucho este país también.
According to many of the residents that I spoke to, the gang members in the video fled the city and state as soon as the video went viral.
Bueno, lo que yo había escuchado antes que sí había, pero ya como la mayoría de las personas me han dicho, no, ya todos se han ido para diferentes estados.
Aquí no están. Se fueron, aquí no están.
A couple days after I filmed these interviews, 9 of the perpetrators, including Cookie, were arrested elsewhere in the county. While I was at the property, I caught the strange vibe that some of the residents were relatively amused by the whole situation and its manufactured severity. After all, many of them, like Daniel, who I interviewed, had just embarked on a very real, death-defying voyage across 9 countries and 3,400 miles to reach the U.S., something a lot scarier than a couple gang members allegedly living at your apartment complex.
¿Estás de Caracas?
No, de Portuguesa.
¿Es una ciudad pequeñita o una...?
Pequeña, es como una zona así del llano, o sea, una campera del campo.
¿Cuántas semanas fue tu viaje para Venezuela aquí?
1 mes, caminando, en bus, pidiendo para comer, en la calle, pidiendo plata.
¿Caminando en la selva?
En la selva, en los otros países, en México.
Mucha gente dije que la parte en la selva, en la Darien, es la parte más difícil, ¿es verdad?
Bueno, para mí fue lo más fácil.
¿Qué fue la parte más difícil de todo?
México, por los policías. Le teníamos que correr a los policías porque nos querían atrapar y vaina, pero yo no caminaba.
Daniel's story about his issues with Mexican authorities at their southern border is one I'd heard before from a Senegalese migrant that I met in Arizona.
Mexico is fucked up though.
The cops?
Yeah, my bro, damn.
Like the Mexican border patrol?
Mexican boy, yo, I spending $5,000.
They extorted you?
Yeah, though. The guy is take me my watch, my heart, and my AirPods, because I don't have the money, man, in my pocket. I use my card. Yeah, my bank.
¿Y la frontera aquí fue fácil?
Bueno, para mí, yo me entregué y sí fue fácil. Me soltaron al siguiente día de una vez.
¿En Texas o Arizona? ¿Dónde?
En Texas.
¿El Río?
No, por ahí por Juárez.
El Paso.
Yeah.
Okay. ¿Tienes familia ahora aquí?
No, aquí yo estoy solo. Pasé solo, llegué solo aquí, entré en un refugio, después conseguí trabajo, gracias a Dios, y ahorita...
¿Toda tu familia ahora es en Venezuela?
Toda.
¿Y hablan con ellos en WhatsApp?
Sí, gracias a Dios.
¿Y tu plan es ganar dinero aquí y después regresar o quieres vivir aquí para toda tu vida?
Bueno, si sale Maduro, si me quiero regresar, pues, si sale. Quiero regresar, quiero estar con mi familia, con mi hija, con mis abuelos, mi mamá, con mi hermana, mis primos, mis tías, ¿sí me entiendes?
¿Aquí solo tienes amigos?
Solo conocidos, sí, conocidos. La meta es cambiarnos de lugar porque, de verdad, una zona donde está supuestamente es caliente. O sea, la idea es mudarnos también.
As I continued to learn, basically everybody living at the complex wants to move out. Inside the units, it appears that almost nothing is working, and tenants say the...
It's almost like the city built these places and made them and even sold them to the developers that now own them for the migrants to live in. And now it's turned to shit.
The landlord company...
Not saying because of the migrants. I'm just pointing out what I see. And even if it did turn to shit, and if it was because of the migrants, is that the migrants' fault? Or is that because you didn't properly spread out them? If you put them all in one spot, they might go back to what they're used to. They might do things that they would do in their hometown. They might not all get the gist of what America is and how it works even. Like, you take out your trash and you put it on the curb and then you pay these people to come by and take it. Maybe they don't even know that. Maybe they don't know that there's trash. And, you know, these are very small things, right? They probably do know this. But it's just a point to be made here. If when you take all of these big groups of migrants that come into your city and you place them in one specific area, and the things that will happen.
CBZ management hasn't accepted payments in 3 months.
Office has been closed. Nobody can pay the rent. Office is shut down over there.
When did that happen?
Like 3 months.
The
office is shut down. Nobody there will take the bill.
It's shut down because of the game.
But, and sorry to interrupt, but I'm sure the developers moved out all the other people that were in here anyway to jack up the price for the migrants that were coming in. So they had to pay more. Would it be right or wrong?
Gangs?
I don't know. Nobody can take the bill.
Okay.
If you can recall our interview earlier with Danielle Jurinsky, Aurora City Councilwoman, she told us that around 3.5 months ago, TDA members beat up the landlord.
And then they held a gun to the maintenance man's head and the cleaning lady's head, robbed her, and told them, you will never return to this property.
And that the gang was now collecting rent, a claim which tenants totally deny.
Yo no he padecido de extorsión, nadie me cobra, yo tengo mi contrato y hasta hace 3 meses le pagábamos al dueño de acá, que fue cuando estalló el problema, que ellos nos abandonaron.
Te digo que estaba pagando mi arriendo, nos cancelaron, no nos aceptan ahorita, que no nos están aceptando el dinero.
Nosotros pagamos el arriendo diario, mes a mes, y el dueño de aquí no ha venido para darnos alguna explicación de lo que se va a hacer con el conjunto de apartamento aquí.
Wait a minute. So have they been living there for 3 months on their own without paying rent? And they're just like not knowing if they're going to be like, if the police are going to come in and kick them out at any time?
Todo lo que ha pasado en los edificios son los dueños, los managers, es lo único. Porque nosotros no fuimos que traímos a personas malas para acá, ¿no? Ellos llegaron porque todo estaba sin dueño y sin riel, entonces tampoco nosotros tenemos seguridad aquí igual.
As I interviewed residents, I could see out of the corner of my eye the first biker arrive. As I mentioned earlier, there were rumors swirling online about the Hells Angels showing up to hold Tren de Aragua to justice, so I was eager to hear what he had to say.
Could you describe him for me? Just a regular biker, man. I don't want to make fun of him.
Going, brother?
Good.
I'm good. How you doing? What's your initial take? What do you think?
I don't see anything that lets me believe.
I'm so morally just. You're looking at him with the Superman thing on. Who's he coming to fight, dude? Who's he coming to fight? He's not getting off that bike. No way. He's not getting off that bike to come over here and.
That there's a potential
not Captain America
migrant takeover of this neighborhood. I'm always willing to readjust my stance based on evidence, but so far I haven't seen anything that suggests that that's true. The Venezuelan gang thing is likely propaganda to try and shift voters red.
Why do you think that they would seize the migrant issue in particular right now?
Because that's all that MAGA has to offer is border control. That's the only thing that they want to hammer home besides that, between that and women's rights.
Create fear and paranoia to turn into votes?
Kind of what it's feeling like. I think that's, historically how the right works, in any country. Fear makes the overhead window shift right.
I'm not gonna lie, when we first saw you, we thought you might have been on the right.
Yeah, I get that on occasion, but no, I'm about as far left as you get.
Yeah? You still got the Israel flag, though.
Yeah, it's a bit of a wedge issue for us Jews. But I absolutely believe in Israel's right to exist.
Yeah.
And Palestinians have the right to exist peacefully alongside of them.
You think a two-state solution is ideal?
Well, I think it's the only solution that works for everybody. If the Palestinian Authority and Hamas would have embraced that at any point in the last 50, 70 years, some things would be a little different.
What's it like being a leftist biker?
Well, I'm not like in a club or anything, I just like to be on the bike.
As evidenced by my interaction with the biker, everything in Aurora was not as it seemed or was made out to be.
As you guys
That's
can
pretty
see, there's not
cool.
really much of a takeover happening here. Hola. What do you think's the most concrete narrative if you were to point to an official narrative of what's going on here?
A made-up story.
Think so?
A made-up story. I mean, this is my first day on the scene, but it just looks like a lot of nothing. Big nothing burger. Just designed to sway voters or to get a certain person in office.
Yeah, so, people say it's a nothing burger and they come out here in the middle of the daytime when the crime isn't being committed, and then they say it's nothing. I mean, these people aren't seeing the crime. They're not looking up the crime statistics. They're not seeing exactly what's happening. There are crimes being committed here. We know people were in this building with firearms that potentially are not here legally. That's 18 USC 922G. It's against the law. They're coming in here and they broke through that door with guns. So when you say it's a nothing burger and you're coming here in the daytime, it's ridiculous.
Much like every other politically divisive culture war flashpoint that I've ever traveled to, it seemed like everybody there who wasn't a resident was divided into two camps. First, you have people like John, who want to prove for their own reasons that the complex was, at one point, crawling with criminals and degenerates. And on the other side, you have people, also for their own reasons typically, trying to ignore crime problems altogether and diverting their anger and outrage at the other side instead.
Hi, who are you guys with?
We're with Channel 5.
With Channel 5?
Yeah.
Just interviewing people?
Yeah.
Okay,
So why do you think there's no gangs here?
because I've been spending my time with these families, because I've been, doing outreach here, getting to know them every day, getting to know their children.
what were the guys with the guns in the hallways about?
I don't know what that was about. That was an old video.
It's not
A
an
lot of
old- it's
people
not an old
say
video.
It was an old video.
No, it's not.
And it was an Aurora police chief interim has said that it has not been taken over by gangs.
So because an Aurora police chief comes by in the daytime with 27 cops and she says that there's not gangs here, then there's no gangs here?
I think that police would be the ones to know what is a gang and what's not a gang.
Not when it's political. There are gangs.
Oh, exactly.
There
It's
are gangs.
political. That's the problem.
There are
This is a
gangs.
political strategy.
Yeah, it is a political strategy by who's currently in office here, by the police
Exactly.
department, the leadership, to say that there's nothing happening.
I'm sorry,
when
it's
you
the
can,
opposite. They're
when
saying
you
that
can,
there are gangs and that's the political strategy.
no, it is not. You can
Correct.
pull the arrest records for this area and the crime records for this area and see how much crime has been committed here. How can you say that there's nothing going on when there is evidence of the crimes that are being
You
committed
can't
here?
do collective punishment because of a racist rumor that this is all taken over by gangs. That's not true.
We are not trying to say that these guys have come in and taken over every building, but to say that they're not harassing the people in these buildings, that they're not extorting some of the people in these buildings, and that there aren't sex crimes going in. I was here on Tuesday morning, there were sex workers in the building, okay? I worked 30 years in law enforcement. Before you call me a bullshit artist, I know a sex worker, okay?
If you're talking about
All right?
sex workers and you're concerned about sex workers have rights as well. Those people should be able to have their rights.
Yes,
And also,
all people have rights. All people have rights.
Let's take a break. Things that were stated in this video: gang members were arrested that were involved in the video. They have been arrested. There was a gang that was at that apartment. That is true. Now, is it true that they were going in, that they were extorting everyone for money? Probably not. Maybe they were there for one specific person that maybe owed them money on some drug-related thing or something like that, right? Who knows? Right? But what's more of the matter, and what I think is actually the meat of this topic, is that this guy who owns the apartment complex left, hasn't been taking care of it, hasn't been accepting rent. And also, why were all these people moved into one specific location? And what was that process like?
talking about a population who doesn't have a right to work,
So you
and you're
admit-
surprised that you might see a sex worker in this setting?
So now it's okay for crime to be committed here. So I understand where you're coming from.
They have said that these people are transitory and do not belong to the building.
Yes, I agree with that.
So then,
Gangs don't live in the building.
Correct, thank
They
you.
come here at nighttime and extort the people.
They
But-
go to a lot of different places.
So,
and
okay,
so, this
so we are
solution of
admitting that there are
closing the
gangs. We're admitting there's gangs.
I don't know what they do. I haven't seen them personally.
just
I have
said-
not seen people personally. I have worked with people. I worked with
You
these
have to
families.
see them. You have to see them personally to understand that they're there. You have to see them and personally I don't want to get that fact mixed up. You have to see them personally to know that they're there.
The strategy should be getting the criminals out of here, getting the people who are running around with AR-15s and pistols in their hands, and breaking down the doors in that building. That's what happened.
You can't break down the doors in a building of families and children. These kids are already traumatized because cops have shown up, SWAT has shown up in the other building.
The gangs broke down the door. We have it on video. We have on video gangs stopping cars in this neighborhood and shooting cars in this neighborhood. There were 2 shootings right outside this neighborhood last night.
In this neighborhood, you don't. Hi, how are you? From the park. Good to see you.
Before we go on, just so you know who I am, John Fabricatore, running for Congress in this area. Spent 30 years with Immigration Customs Enforcement, been in law enforcement for a long time, and now she's shaking her head because I've said
in ICE?
I was in ICE.
Oh my God, that's horrible. The worst people work for ICE. They really do. I've gone into the ICE office. I've seen how people are treated. I've seen how people are treated. It's horrible.
God bless you.
Yes,
thank you for your service.
Thank you. So John Fabricatore,
Service for ICE?
spent 23 years
Goodness,
with
please.
Immigration
I'm sorry,
Customs.
start again.
What's going on?
After mentally dissociating for several minutes, I felt like I was truly getting lost in the sauce, as they say, documenting counterproductive crossfire between 2 people who fundamentally disagree. After all, the true story in my eyes was regarding the strange specifics of the landlord company, CBZ, who went absent and stopped collecting rent and maintaining utilities over 3 months ago, which thankfully is a subject that V, the activist representing a group called House Keys Action Network Denver, was very knowledgeable about.
When you're 85 years old on your deathbed,
That guy's fucking
Right now, the city government is siding with a slumlord. He is a criminal. He has open cases against him. There was an infant who died in one of his buildings in New York.
Talking about the property owner.
Correct. Zev Baumgartner, CBZ Management. They stopped, first of all, these people are sometimes paying as much as $2,000 per these units.
Yeah.
Which they're paying upwards of $2,000 fucking dollars for these horrible, infested units, and they're reporting and they're asking for management to do something about it, and they're being told that they won't do anything and being told that, they should fix it themselves. These are paying tenants. People have receipts. They don't deserve any of this treatment, and we have to hold them accountable. They have legal cases against them. There's no reason that a city government should be siding with someone who has open legal cases against him.
Yeah.
For his negligence of his properties. Why are you even pretending like you believe him at this point? It's like he latched on, he hired a PR firm in Florida to call these people thieves and criminals and jump on that bandwagon.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, he did. He hired a PR firm in Florida.
To do a smear campaign.
Yes.
Okay.
And it was successful.
Yeah.
My conversation with V prompted me to investigate the history of code violations and lawsuits leveraged against Zev Baumgarten and CBZ Management, the most controversial of which regards a building just a few blocks away from the Red Brick Complex, referred to as the Nome Street Apartments.
So believe it or not, fellas, this right here is where the story began. This place is down in the dumps. It's condemned. Nobody lives here.
Why was it condemned, you might ask? Code violations.
The city of Aurora said it shut down the complex because living conditions are unfit for human habitation.
Mice, rats, fucked up stuff with the floorboards, pipes bursting, roaches coming out of the shower while you're taking a shower. So you turn on the water, you think it's hot water, but it's like thousands of roaches that come flying out the drain. I don't actually know if that's what happened, but for a long period of time, pretty much this entire place was packed to the brim with Venezuelan migrants. Jeez. And then about 3.5 months ago, one day the city came here, shut the whole place down.
City inspectors finding piled up trash, bug infestations, and sewage backups, in addition to a lack of heat and electricity. These officers going door to door, posting notices to alert residents.
Everybody was forced to get out of here. They evicted everybody. In response, Zev, along with the property company, hired a PR firm out of Florida.
Which, ironically, is something that Danielle, the story's key whistleblower, is totally open about.
So the property owner did hire a PR firm. I think that's what any business owner in that position would do. He himself is not going to start doing interviews, right? And trying to talk to the media. So
and then they moved after the building got condemned. They moved them all to the one right next to it.
Yeah, Zev is the one who was assaulted and hospitalized. And just to note, the
Wait,
PR
what?
firm wasn't hired until the city closed in on Nome Street, which was August. So that's when the PR firm was hired. It's not like the PR firm was hired months and months ago.
Right.
The PR firm was just hired within the last month. And it's because of how much media attention was garnered from closing the Nome Street property.
The Nome Street closure was nothing short of a PR disaster for Zev, with headlines swirling around calling him a slumlord, taking advantage of vulnerable migrants.
Fox 31 found entire families on the street saying they had nowhere to go after the city shut down the complex. The mayor of Aurora called the owners of the complex slumlords.
They're out-of-state slumlords.
Residents at both locations have made complaints about filthy living conditions, with proof of trash piling up, rats, bed bugs, and depleting buildings.
City leaders tell us they've been trying to hold CBZ accountable for code violations for years.
That's where Red Banyan Crisis Communications came in.
Utilizing Red Banyan's proprietary approach, we help you press the truth, seize the initiative, and triumph in the court of public opinion.
If you didn't know, what crisis PR firms do is take someone embroiled in controversy and use their unique relationships with journalists and media outlets to basically flood the airwaves with an alternate story in a coordinated effort to shift the narrative, or in some cases, create a narrative from thin air.
The PR firm was hired to essentially respond to media requests that had started coming into them.
In response to media requests, Red Banyan, speaking on behalf of CBZ, said it was impossible to maintain the property due to gang threats.
The owners of the complex and CBZ management claimed it couldn't do maintenance or repairs because the complex was overrun by a migrant gang.
Simultaneously, Danielle, who appears to be working in some level of coordination with Zev, began doing televised interviews and claiming that all of these code violations were inflicted by the tenants themselves.
Those are the ones that I believe broke the windows, broke the doors, graffitied Venezuela all over the buildings. I mean, can I say, with all certainty that CBZ Property Management is this, just stellar property management company? I can't say that.
Yeah.
That's not the issue at hand here. And if you look at the code enforcement violations that were issued against these properties, it's things like graffiti.
That's not the issue at hand. The issue at hand isn't that these people are being put out on the streets and that the living condition is horrible and that's why the building had to be condemned. That's not the issue. Not that the guy that was running the building wasn't actually keeping up with it, or even going to look at it, or sending people in to, and I don't know exactly if he did or didn't do that, right? But that's not the issue.
Trash
seems like it is the issue.
Broken windows, broken doors. Those aren't things like I have a leak.
Danielle was either consciously lying or didn't have access to the documents that we did.
I'm not saying there's not code enforcement violations. I mean, I'm not a building engineer. I have no clue.
Shortly after we announced on Instagram that we were shooting this documentary, a former CBZ employee, tasked with managing both Nome Street and Dallas Street, reached out to us.
Bro, big fan, man. I fuck with you heavy.
And provided us with a full list of code violations attached to Nome Street alone, ranging from roof damage to ceiling damage to doors broken to plumbing not working attached to Nome Street alone, ranging from roof damage to ceiling damage to doors broken to plumbing not working to smoke detectors broken to inoperable kitchen sinks and garbage disposals not working to leaks to holes and roaches and mice and beyond. Over 16 months before the gang presence allegedly created the disrepair and decay. So what the hell really happened? Let's get into it once again.
So can you first kind of tell us what you do for work and your relationship to CBZ?
I was hired as a property manager, and I worked there for about a year.
How did you first meet Zev?
Craigslist.
How did you feel about Mayor Mike Kaufman's characterization of Zev as a slumlord?
It's true, definitely. Well, one day we had a fucking whole backup of shit, it was a black water line back up into the basement. Dude, we literally got 2 people to work $15 an hour, both of them, together, $7.50 to clean that whole area. I was probably one of the most fucked up things I've seen.
Yo, how the migrants are finding jobs out here is that the apartments they're living in, they have to fix. The people who own the apartment are paying them to fix it up.
It was damn, dude, why don't fuck it. If it's a couple thousand, what's gonna kill you to spend it? If you get it fixed right, it's gonna be good. More people are gonna come. You're gonna have decent people to respect it. If you're not gonna put the effort into giving a shit about the property, so why the fuck should everybody else? But you would see a lot of roaches, bed bugs. It's just so much shit, dude. Honestly, he did shit that was fucked up, but at the same time, the people who lived in it didn't really respect it or respect the property.
When did you guys start seeing a significant amount of criminal activity at the Nome Street property?
But it's always been there. That's something I've always seen. You see a lot of people just smoking crack, smoking foilies. Cops knew about it. You reported it, but they wouldn't go and kick down the door and arrest everybody. There was just, bro, constant traffic, homeless people walking in and out. Nome was known as the hottest building on Colfax. So everybody would go into the lobby at night because they would leave it open and they'll jump in there, smoke crack all day, all night. Supposedly, when we weren't there, bro, people would go in there well-dressed, chains, bust down watches, go into the lobby and start selling that shit. Start selling to all the crackheads there and just let them smoke up.
And was there an effort on your guys' behalf trying to work with the Aurora police to get the place cleaned up?
You call 911 and you're sitting on hold for 10 minutes. I had a homeless guy threaten to throw rocks at my car window. Called at 9 in the morning. They showed up at 12. I just felt like they were just negligent in general. Like they were just not doing much.
Do you think this is really just also a case of the city not taking it seriously enough too?
If you've been getting scam texts,
Yeah, I think that's
like
what
these,
it is.
Not taking the drugs serious enough. Like even when you say like, hey, look, these people are selling drugs and they're threatening our tenants. Okay, yeah, we'll send an officer. 4 or 5 hours later, no, don't worry about it. I already told them to leave and they left. Bro, at one point these people didn't even want to call the cops because they're like, dude, they're not going to do anything, so fuck it.
Out of protest, he says, many leaseholders stopped paying rent. Not because they were now paying rent to the gang, but because they simply didn't want to pay it to Zev and CBZ.
Like, people were just more fed up of just how it was going.
In response to their protest, Zev began escalating his tactics in an effort to get them to pay up.
Removing doors, shutting power, like shit that I was like, yo, like, oh, just shut the power. I'm like, yeah, bro, I'm not fucking touching that. Like, you want to do that shit, I'm out. Like, you could touch it, fuck it. They're not going to pay. I'd rather just send the paperwork and do that, right? Fuck that.
Tenants then began ignoring his eviction notices and continuing to live there, which led to the dramatic confrontation in which Zev was assaulted.
What happened there?
He found some people in the unit. He literally goes in, tells them all to get out. He's on the phone and they all start just crowding in his face. One swings at him and then they just, 2-3 of them just start kicking him and he gets on the floor and just try to like block himself and just get on the ground.
Understandably so, the attack rattled Zev to his core.
He wouldn't walk the properties by himself after that time he got jumped.
Shortly after, Zev decided to shut down the entire residential lease office and instructed all of his staff to leave the property for good. After which, the apartments became a haven for criminal activity.
After we left, it was just, there was no one there. So they just took advantage. Like they would steal cars, park them in the parking lot at Nome, stand outside, smoke their cigarettes, blast, like listen to music and just laugh at the cops while they picked up the cars.
Was there any kind of Venezuelan gang takeover at the Nome Street property?
In my opinion, no. I think it was more people just took advantage of the situation. People just didn't see anybody walking the property showing face. They're like, shit, nobody's here now? Shit, no one's here. All right, bet I can kick the door down, tell my friend to come, and I collect the rent for him.
But still, our friend thinks the gang renting out certain units may have not been Tren de Aragua.
You know those pictures they're posting on Twitter and saying they're Tren del Agua? And like all these people are Tren del Agua. I was like, bro, but some of those people I'd see them go at 6 in the morning and they're coming back at 3 in the afternoon working construction hats and vests. And bro, they were working jobs every day. But you just have a bad apple that fucks it up.
Does that mean they're not involved in illegal activity though?
For everybody else. Bro, all those people, like the good people there just wanted to live like decent human beings, man. They just didn't want to live that bullshit. And as soon as someone stopped showing
Maduro regime in favor of a U.S.-backed opposition candidate named Juan Guaido.
I gotta put this ball down. I gotta put this ball down. Okay? I'm putting it down. I'm putting it down. Okay?
Is actually pretty obvious. If you can hold this report.
And as soon as someone stopped showing face, that's what really fucked it.
Hey man, thank you so much for talking to us. I appreciate you, bro.
I conclude this report with mixed feelings, but I think that what happened is actually pretty obvious. If you can hold tight onto a core ideological truth that often gets lost in these strange times, which is that two things can be true. You can acknowledge the existence of migrant gangs without characterizing all migrants as criminals. And you can acknowledge the existence of negligent landlords who play a role in facilitating the environments where gangs thrive. Honestly, those two things have always sort of gone hand in hand. But the discourse online and also in person represent two sides that are incapable of having a nuanced conversation, and instead exist only to maximize or minimize a singular scapegoat in a complicated problem. But at least the NGOs are trying to help people. It all reminds me a bit of the 2020 election many years ago, documenting hypnotized media consumers emerging from their online echo chambers and pouring out onto the streets to search for perspectives and visuals that validate things they already believe. By the time I wrapped up my report in Colorado, the front lines of the migrant hysteria crisis had already shifted fronts, from Aurora over to Springfield, Ohio, where Trump and J.D. Vance claimed that Haitians were eating cats.
They're eating the dogs, the people that came in.
Dude.
They're eating the cats.
A claim that was debunked by the mayor, the state, and basically everybody else. After the presidential debates, my inbox was flooded by emails saying that Channel 5 should go there. But guess what? I'm not going. I'm not going to follow every shitty thing that Trump says about migrants across the country and feed the algorithm they've created by lying. Although from a Haitian voting perspective, I think Trump really played reverse chess on himself. After freeing Kodak Black, Trump had the Haitian, and by extension, Afro-Caribbean diaspora in his pocket. And to see him drop the ball in this way was truly unforgettable. But beyond that, we're not going to chase migrant panic waves across the country. We respect our fan base and their intelligence a lot, and believe wholeheartedly that Channel 5 fans can sniff out bullshit without requiring me to show up and humanize an interview subject. So shout out to the homies, shout out to the Haitians, and shout out to the haters. We're taking applications.
If you ever stumble with drugs, I don't blame y'all. When I'm having a bad day, the same lame brain calls. Gotta get out of my way, cause I feel like a kid with my life in the hands of an 8-ball. Days in my apartment picking meth off the carpet. I say it's retarded, but I was slow to get anything started. Days awake, I start hallucinating. I was on ACID like I was about to get carded. Was in the migrant muck. High and I fuck up that time of the month with no parachute. Thought it would fly when I jumped to the lies of the drugs. When my mind was corrupt, wanted to die by the gun. When you choose to lie, you choose the wrong fate. Slip and stumble, no, you fall a long way, like you're walking through the Matrix hallway with doors on the left and right, but you can't open them anyway. I really feel like I was less than a person, snorting meth on machete blades, still knowing I'm worthless, a cursed birth, and the mirth feeling like I'm berserk, feeling what I'm feeling and telling people it doesn't work. But like the sun raised up above the tree line, feline, stay behind, yeah, they'll be fine. Each time I try to care about another, it doesn't get reciprocated, then I get torn asunder. I try to see through the crowd of people who say trust isn't enough to keep me around. I sound like I'm down in the basement, surrounded by drugs. Mounts is amazing, sucked in by the substance, been rough since my first bump with all the people I thought were my homies.
Hell yeah.
Just want to let you know you can do it. Get off them drugs, bro.
Hell yeah. You really was snorting meth off a machete?
Yeah. Yeah. 20 years old, I had a machete and I had a hook, so I was like, hey, y'all want one? And yeah, we lit it up.
You clean off that shit now?
I've been clean for about 5.5 years now.
Congratulations, bro.
Yeah, meth and cocaine. No rehab for either, so you can fucking
years,
do it, bud.
damn.
Yeah.
Channel 5 live worldwide, Hollywood and Vine. Fuck the authority, Channel 5 News. Channel 55.
Now?
I've been clean for about 5.5 years now.
Congratulations,
What was
bro.
that?
Meth and cocaine.
Wait, hold on.
No rehab for either, so you can fucking
It
do
got
it,
cut
bud.
off. Wait a minute.
Channel 5 live worldwide, Hollywood and Vine. Fuck the authority, Channel 5 News. Channel 55.
Yo, I love this shit, man. Yo, this is
Canada,
good news.
America.
This is good news.